And continuing on, today is June 26, 2023. We are going to look at an article from June 23rd, 2023. So let me just pull this up. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., 2024 presidential hopeful shares views on top issues in New Hampshire town hall event. So this was he's doing a lot in New Hampshire. Pretty interesting there. This is from Conversation with the Candidate and from WMUR9 ABC. So lots of great pieces in here. This is an article by Adam Sexton, political director. This is like a 7-minute clip. There's like several of these clips here, and I will be uploading the full all parts of this video. I found 5 of them. This website only shows 3, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, but that will be up on my other channel, Greg Fernandez Jr. the third. So Manchester, New Hampshire, Democrat Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is running for president, touched on a number of topics recently in, quote, a conversation with the candidate town hall event with New Hampshire voters. So the town hall events, I really like the way that these are kind of laid out, and I'm just going to make sure that there's some audio. Yeah, good. We got some audio. Cool. All right, so you can watch the full conversation in the video player above or the links below. Included is a 30-minute online-only portion of the conversation. So there's part 1. Kennedy speaks on his anti-vaccine views. Very interesting. Probably not very wise to play here. Watch part 2. Kennedy says he supports abortion rights. Number 3, Kennedy weighs in on nuclear energy. So Conversations with the Candidate is a town hall style program. It is intended to allow the candidate to convey their points of view to a wide range of topics. During the program, the moderator may challenge the candidate's assertion, but every fact may not be checked in real time. WMUR News 9 is committed to holding the candidates accountable on their claims throughout the election process. And that is exactly what we get here. So there is a lot of things that are covered in this long video. This article, I thought, really just breaks it all down, and so that's what I'm going to be covering here. It's just how this article really breaks a lot of this stuff down. So and then everyone obviously gets to decide. You decide however you feel, who you want to vote for. But these are the best ways for a candidate to get in touch, stay in touch, and to get questions directly from the people, which is something that Joe Biden does not want to do, does not plan on doing. And we know that President Trump does. He's already done 2 town halls, right? A fiery one on CNN with CNN, and then a more chillax one on Sean Hannity's Fox show, which was just kind of the same old stuff that we've been hearing. And I think only one question from the audience. So it wasn't really a town hall. It was more like an interview with Sean Hannity, which we've been there, done that. So if you didn't know, Trump did 2 awesome speeches over the weekend, and I will also try to get those up. I tried to back those up and hopefully pull some clips from them, because these are 2 more amazing speeches. And yes, some of it you have heard, and some of it we will continue to hear over and over. But there's also a lot of great Trumpisms and things like that, and a lot of new things, because there's always something new happening in Trump's world because of how the media likes to portray him, and because of how certain allegations have been levied against him that always end up being false. But the narrative does not change, even when these things like Russiagate have been proven false. The narrative for some of these people stay the same. But we're supposed to give Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and the Bidens and all of the people that are cool with them, we're supposed to keep an open mind and not judge them. But it's okay to prejudge Trump, and then even after he's accused of something and it turns out to be false, they have no issue with sticking to that fake news story. And they do the same thing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And the more that I continue to look at this stuff, the more that I see the comparison, and the more that I see it's the same script. They do not want RFK in there, and they do not want John F. Kennedy. They do not want Donald Trump in there. But in the end, it all comes down to what God wants for God's purposes, not for our purposes. Some things will happen, and we'll see where everything goes. But if God calls you to do something, and if God called Donald Trump and called RFK Jr. to take this path, then they must take this path. If he called anybody to do it, they must take this path for whatever reason. The devil can call people too, but in the end, it's all under God's control. So I will go back to a little bit more of this article. This is a great article. And again, the author of the article, Adam Sexton. Who's that other guy? I can't think of his name. I was going to say a joke, but anyways. So let's learn more about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s background. Kennedy says he has carried his family legacy of public service by devoting himself to environmental causes and children's welfare. He was the founder of the Waterkeeper Alliance, the world's largest clean water advocacy group, and was chief litigation counsel for Children's Health Defense, which, among other things, advocates for what is called the vaccine resistance movement. Well, there's a great way Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may get some criticism, and he may be accused of separating the country or separating the nation and, separating his party, his own party. But he's not looking at this strictly on party lines and what's best for his party. Obviously not. He's looking at what's best for the American people. And you're going to see that over and over again with guys like Donald Trump, with guys like RFK Jr., and even with guys like Ron DeSantis and Tim. I'm going to get his name right. I keep wanting to say Tim Kaine, Tim Allen. I'm going to look it up because in the last show I really butchered his name. I'm just running for president. Tim Scott. Okay, see if I like Michael Scott, but Tim. See if I can hold that in my little brain here. So I just had to look that up because that was bothering me. Okay. So Kennedy is also an award-winning writer, including 2 New York Times bestsellers, 2005 Crimes Against Nature and 2021's The Real Anthony Fauci. Now, I have not read 2005 Crimes Against Nature, but I have the audiobook of The Real Anthony Fauci, and I really want to get the physical copy just to have. But the audiobook, what is and was amazing. So much factual stuff there. Not a whole lot about the COVID, but it really goes into who Anthony Fauci was before all of the COVID nonsense happened. Very fascinating. So he said his campaign for president is fighting for progressive issues, stopping what he calls the rigging of the system, and the war against America's middle class. Kennedy graduated from Harvard University, studied at the London School of Economics, and earned his law degree from the University of Virginia. Not very kooky all of a sudden here. He is married to actress Cheryl Hines. The couple has 7 children. Wow. Including Kennedy's 6 children from 2 previous marriages. Oh, okay. I was going to say, wasn't married that long. Kennedy is the third of 11 children of the late U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy. I am so happy that there are so many good people, so many good networks, local networks, good news outlets that are covering RFK Jr. for better or for worse. Most of them are not doing hit pieces. The big ones that we already know about, big ones that have been doing hit pieces on Trump and on other people too on both sides, they're running away with it. I saw RFK post this morning about Rolling Stone and how Rolling Stone was doing a hit piece on him. And I forget what did he call him. I took the screenshot, so I'm actually, because I want to use it. It's such a great screenshot. It's on his Twitter. I know it's on his Twitter there too, but let me see if I can pull this up. So he says, he may have wrote this yesterday. I'm just going to read it, not going to put it up the screen. But he says, expect Rolling Stone to lead the corporate media's frantic crusade to vilify me to stop my White House bid. Rolling Stone was once the premier standard bearer of the counterculture. Now it's a channel for establishment propaganda. And then hashtag trolling Stone, and this other hashtag rolling smear. That's good. That's a good one. Two good ones there. I like that. Make sure you follow Kennedy on Twitter. This morning, today, and yesterday, he posted some really good stuff on his Twitter account, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he's verified on there. Ooh, he's got the blue check mark. Fact checkers. Kennedy shares what he saw at the southern border crossing. Kennedy was asked during the town hall portion of the event about his views on the immigration crisis, and he spent time sharing what he saw when he visited the southern border. He said the night he visited the border, he believes about 600 to 800 people crossed into U.S. illegally, right there on camera with, Border Patrol and everybody just paralyzed. He says no country can survive it if it can't control its borders. Kennedy says it's his view that drug cartels in Mexico play a major role in the immigration crisis. There it is. See more of his answer in the video player below. Let me see how long this. I'll play a few minutes.
Menacing. 3, 2, 1.
They just
have
to
got
do the
covered
ads
by Delta
there.
Dental and the nation's largest network of
With
dentists.
no
and they can't stop smiling.
No way to edit or pause the ad there. Silence. Mute that sucker. Let's hear it. Okay, this was 7 minutes.
We had Mr. Kennedy talking about the issue of immigration. Mr. Kennedy, you've been to the border. You've seen the crossings coming across. Really, this is a massive humanitarian crisis. So as president, what would you do about it?
Yeah, can I describe it first, kind of what I saw? Because I flew down to Yuma, and then at 1 o'clock arrived at the 1 o'clock a.m. arrived at the border. And the first group when I arrived there was a group coming across of about, I think it was 2 busloads, it was about 100 and maybe about 100 people who are all West Africans. So I had expected I'd see a lot of Central Americans, people from Salvador and Panama and Guatemala, but that's not what it was. It was all Africans, African men, military age. Most of them were from Senegal.
Isn't that interesting? I just want to say, isn't that interesting? Because I thought the same thing. You would just see a bunch of people flooding from South America. That's not the case at all. They're coming from everywhere. At some point in that 2-minute video that we played in a earlier episode, Kennedy talks about how from like over 160 some odd countries people are coming from. That's something Donald Trump has been saying for years now, and RFK is saying the exact same thing.
Came across and they're just waiting in line to cross. Hundreds and hundreds of people. They come in buses of 55 each, and they're let off about a half mile, and then they walk to the gap in the fence, and they walk around. The next group, I went and talked to them, and there was only 2 families that were from Latin America, one from Colombia, one from Peru. The rest were from Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Tibet, Kazakhstan, Nepal, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Eastern Europe. And what's happening, and as I said, it's the insanity of it. They're brought across, they're fingerprinted to see if they have criminal records. If they don't, they're asked one question by the Border Patrol: do you have a contact in this country? And if they say yes, the Border Patrol says, can you put us on the phone with that contact? If they can do that, if they can get them on a cell phone, the Border Patrol asks them, if we put this family on an airplane, will you pick them up at Minneapolis or San Diego or Chicago and New York? And if that person says yes, and they take them to the airport, FEMA pays for their ticket and they go anywhere they want in the country. 7 million people have come across. The cartels control all the immigration, and they have shifted from drug smuggling to make this one of their big, profit lines. So they're sending videos, social media videos all over the world, recruiting people from countries. They have lawyers who are working with them in other countries. They tell them exactly what to do. You get on a plane to Mexico City. The cartels help you get a visa in Mexico City for Mexico. They then put you on an internal plane to Mexicali. The cartels have a parking lot filled with buses at Mexicali. You get on one of those buses, and then they drive you to the crossing. And there are 9 big crossings. And the one I went to was in Yuma, and the night I went there, probably 600 to 800 people came across, and the little town of Yuma is bearing a lot of the initial burden because a lot of these people are sick, so they go to the hospital. There's a lot of pregnant women. I talked to them. I spent a day with the head of the hospital, and he said that a few months ago there were so many pregnant immigrants in his hospital. They occupied 32 of the 35 beds on the maternity ward, and a lot of local women who had scheduled pregnancy inductions, induced births, C-sections, whatever, could not get in, had to cancel or postpone their appointments. He said that he spent $27 million of the hospital's budget last year unreimbursed to take care of the immigrants. And that, we talked with the sheriff who told us because the entire Border Patrol is now processing people, there's nobody guarding the border, and the drugs are pouring across through the other place. If you're a smuggler or a bad guy, you don't come through that fence, around that fence. These are all people who intend to stay in this country. When they stay, they're given a court date 7 years from now. And meanwhile, there's 1 million immigrants who are legally coming here, 1.1 million immigrants who go through the whole process, which could take them 8 or 10 years. And this is like a stick in the face for them. So, no country can survive if it can't control its borders, and we're not doing that. The good news is this, that everybody that I talked to there said that this is easy to stop. That the way to stop it is very, very simple, and that they've been doing it before. Now, I didn't like to hear this because I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. I did not like his wall. But what the Border Patrol and everybody else said is, you don't need to build a physical barrier from San Diego, 2,200 miles to Brownsville, Texas. You do need a physical barrier in certain places where there's high density populations. The rest of it you can monitor with ground monitoring, very, very sophisticated surveillance and ground monitoring systems. Many of those were put up during the Trump administration, but for some reason, the Biden administration, when it came in, took down the towers and they removed the ground sensing systems. This is not something that, as a Democrat, that I want to hear. And then, once it got out that this is an open border and the cartels saw that there's a huge profit opportunity here, the flow has just increased exponentially. But we can stop it. During the Trump administration, the crossings at Yuma were about 10 to 25 a day at most. Now, as I said, they're 200 to 800 a day. So, we can solve this problem, but we need to do it in a way that's sensible, that's common sense, and that is not causing this terrible, terrible humanitarian crisis. From where I sat on the border, there's a tree that you can see on the other side of the fence, but it's in U.S. territory. It's called the rape tree. And it's where the cartels extract their final payment from women who come across, sometimes from children. The Border Patrol watches helplessly while they do this. I talked to people, this Peruvian family that I talked to that had lost their life savings because the cartels rob them, they beat them, they extort them, they exploit them, and ultimately they rape them. And, this is a humanitarian crisis that that we're creating through government negligence, and we need to end it for everybody's sake.
That was probably one of the most powerful things that I have heard. And he pretty much praised Trump right there for what Trump was doing. And how do you go from 25 people, and how do the Border Patrol, they have to watch this, and they can't do anything as these people are being beaten, as they're being raped. This is just craziness. And RFK Jr. gets this. And I know these Democrat people that are watching this, that are listening to it, they would not, if it was Trump saying it, they're not going to take it seriously. But now you have RFK Jr. saying it, and thank God that you do, because now you may have more people who actually take it seriously and actually realize, whether they like Trump or whether they're even going to vote for him, he was doing the right thing. He was a big threat to the cartels. He was a big threat to the Mexican government, who seems to be limp, who seems to not be able to control its own country here. It's just crazy what's happening in Mexico. And then you think of the people that are coming from South America to get into Mexico. I mean, that's like going through fire to get into hell here. And that is what is happening. These people, I mean, it's just sad, but to hear it from RFK Jr., I thank God for him. Thank God that he's at least speaking to these people about this crazy border issue. That is an awesome clip. I love how he brings these stats. Remember, this is the same thing Donald Trump has been saying for years. RFK just may be able to articulate it a little bit better, in my view. But it's the same message, and it's the same thing that is happening. And it's nice to hear it from a candidate on both sides of the aisle, who are both being attacked by the highest echelons, the elites in their own party. It's very refreshing to hear, and I'm very happy to have both of these candidates. It really restores some of my faith in this country, in our political system here, and that it's not lost yet. It's not lost. It's not over. We still have very good candidates on both sides. I see other candidates on both sides that are talking about these same things. They're not getting the same media coverage. They don't have the same clout that RFK Jr. and Donald Trump have, but they are talking about these same issues. And it's not just some people, who all of a sudden are talking about this. These are people that have been talking about this for a long time. But what this sounds like is RFK Jr., by going to the border, learned that what Trump was saying is true and has been true for a long time. And it's time to stop that, right? I mean, one of the worst things is rape. It really is. And we can't let that happen. I don't like hearing about it. I don't like when people joke about it in our prison systems. It should not happen at all, ever, period. And it's one of the things that is right there on the front line when Trump has been talking about human trafficking, drug trafficking, sex trafficking. I mean, RFK Jr. was just saying, there's children that are doing this, that are being subjected to this to get into this country. It's crazy. These are human sacrifices happening in real time. And so it's really good to hear a presidential candidate talk about this. It's very, very powerful, and he has the utmost respect. Kennedy harkens back to his father's 1968 presidential bid in discussing how to unify this country. A voter asked the Democrat about how he feels his campaign could potentially help unite the country, and he spent much of his answer recalling his father's 1968 campaign for president, which would have been great if he hadn't been killed. U.S. Senator Robert F. Kennedy Sr. was shot on June 5th, 1968, and died the following day. He won the California and South Dakota presidential primaries earlier that week as he built a campaign to challenge same-party incumbent President Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy said his father, too, faced a divided nation when he ran for president. My dad faced the same thing when he ran for president against the sitting president of his own party. the same as I'm doing, Kennedy said. You know, my father succeeded in uniting the country. Kennedy remarked his father's wins right Kennedy remarked his father's wins right before his death were in the country's most urban and rural states. He had succeeded in bridging the gap, Kennedy said. This was at a time that was almost as polarized as we are today. Kennedy recalled being with his father when he died and the country's response to the death in the days that followed, including an anecdote about what he saw while riding in a train from New York City to Washington, D.C. with his father's remains. And I did play that on my other channel. You can go find that too, the funeral for RFK Sr. Here's what Kennedy says about that. There were 2.5 million people along that train track, and they were the entire cross-section of the American experience. When we went through the urban train stations, we crawled through 2 miles an hour. We crawled at 2 miles an hour through Newark, Trenton, Wilmington, Baltimore. There were black faces, tens of thousands of them singing the battle hymn of the Republic. Ooh, that gives me chills. In the countryside, Kennedy continues, there were whites, there were Catholics, there were rabbis, there were priests, Kennedy said. See his full answer in the video below. Whew, that's some powerful stuff. I'm going to play that. I'm going to play that here for. I do want to hear his stance on. I'd love to be able to play his stance on vaccines, but we all know what's going to happen there. Let me play this little clip here. Of course, we got the ads. All right.
Thank you for taking my question. Our world is really a mess. Our country is a mess. People are angry and hurting each other. And so my question to you is, how would you as president unite us as Americans?
The question is, how would I unite people and sort of end the polarization? You know, my dad had faced the same thing when he ran for president against the sitting president of his own party, the same as I'm doing, in 1968. And, you know, my father and he succeeded in uniting the country. The day that he died, he won the most rural state in our country, South Dakota, and the most urban state, California. And he had succeeded in bridging that gap. And this was at a time that was almost as polarized as we are today because of the Vietnam War, civil rights, our cities were burning. You know, the National Guard was federalized and was shooting students on campuses. So it was really a very, very hard time in our history and nearly as much polarization. My father did this by telling the truth to people. He was running at a time when he decided to run, he was running for moral reason. Because of the Vietnam War, he did not believe that he didn't want to run. He didn't think he could win. He was going to sit it out, but he worried that somebody would put a microphone in his face and say, "Are you for Eugene McCarthy?" Who he did not like, who he thought was in the tank with the insurance companies, or Lyndon Johnson, who he couldn't support because of the war, or Richard Nixon. And he couldn't support any of them. And so he felt like the only thing he could do that was honest and forthright was to run himself, even though he had no chance to win. He'd run his brother's campaign 8 years before. And but then they had the unions on their side. They had the big city mayors. They had the liberal newspapers like the New York Times. All of those were against my father. The only unions he had was the UAW and the Cesar Chavez United Farm Workers. And all the people who had been with him when he ran the first time and had gone into the New Frontier were now working for Johnson. So he was really alone when he decided to run. And it freed him to tell the truth to people. So when he went to Creighton University in Indiana and the students say, are you going to preserve our draft deferments? McCarthy said, yeah. He said, no, I'm not, because 45% of the paratroopers in Vietnam are black. And it's unfair. I can get my kids into college and get the deferment. And it's unfair and wrong in our country that our wars are being fought by black kids who can't get buy that deferment. and he was booed. And, he said, how does that sit with your Catholic values?
Mm.
And he engaged him in that discussion. In the end, he was given a standing ovation. When he went to the Indiana Medical School, the students asked him, who's going to pay for your health care? And he said, you are. And they booed him. By the end of that conversation, they were applauding him. When he went to Watts, which was on fire, he talked to them about the importance of abiding by the law, which was not a popular thing, in those communities. When he went to the University of Alabama, which he had forcibly integrated 5 years before by federalizing the National Guard, sending 18,000 troops down there, he talked about civil rights. He was given a standing ovation. When I was with him when he died in Los Angeles, and we brought him back to New York, to wake him at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and then we took him on this ride from Penn Station in Manhattan to Union Station in Washington, D.C. It was supposed to be a 2.5-hour ride. It was 7.5 hours because there were 2.5 million people on that train track, and they were the entire cross-section of the American experience. When we went through the urban train stations and crawled through at 2 miles an hour, through Newark, Trenton, Wilmington, Baltimore, there were black faces, tens of thousands of them, singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. In the countryside, there were whites, there were Catholics, there were rabbis, there were priests. I remember 7 nuns standing in the back of a pickup truck right outside of Wilmington, waving their rosaries at us when I passed. Little leaguers standing at attention, Boy Scouts, and it was the cross section of the American experience. And I remember 4 years later reading. I was going to college by then, and I was reading demographic data from that election from 1972, where George McGovern had run, who was aligned with my father on every issue. And what this data showed is that those white people who had lined that track to say goodbye to my dad and who had supported him in the election, 4 years later were not supporting George McGovern, who was aligned with my dad on everything. Instead, they were supporting George Wallace, who was antithetical to everything my father believed in. He was a racist, a bigot, a segregationist. And it occurred to me then, and it has struck me many times since, that every nation, like every individual, has a darker side and a lighter side, and that the easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to our bigotry and our hatred and our anger and our greed and xenophobia and tribalism. And that my father tried to do something different, which is to appeal to our populist impulses and instincts, do it by finding our better natures, by getting us to step outside of our own narrow self-interest, to transcend that, and to see ourselves as part of a larger community, part of this kind of noble experiment in, the American experiment in self-governance, and to help us find a hero in each of us and take the risks that it takes to stand up for something, for a community that may not look all like you, and to avoid the seduction of the notion that we can advance ourselves as a people by leaving our poor brothers and sisters behind. And he was able to do that, and he did it successfully. And every populist movement can be hijacked by demagogues who are appealing to our darker angels. And that the challenge that I hope to manifest is to persuade Americans that we are part of a community, and that there's ways that by focusing not on the issues that keep us apart, but on the values that unite us, that we have in common, to run a campaign that focuses on those values and focuses on solutions that are going to work for everybody, rather than the narrow tribalistic solutions that have been part of the debate so far. And that's why I don't take the easy, democratic answer on gun control, because it hasn't worked so far. It just hasn't worked. It's just divided us. But what's the thing we have in common? We all want to protect our children. So let's figure out a way to do that doesn't impede on somebody's deeply held values, other Americans' deeply held values. And if we start trusting each other again, maybe ultimately we can get gun control, sensible, common sense gun control through consensus, other than forcing it down people's throats. So that's what I hope to do with my campaign.
There it is. Very, very powerful stuff there. So that is the article. That's pretty much everything in the article. I will be posting. I will post here just in a few minutes. And if you want to join me on my other channel later on, I'm going to post that full interview. It's really, really good. So I am going to post that at some point. Okay, I guess you can see it there. So I'm going to schedule this. This is on my other channel. What is today? Today is the 26th. And schedule it for this evening here. Yeah, it's about, okay, an hour and 13 minutes. I'm going to schedule it for, let's go for 5:15 California time, set as premiere. For some reason, I really like this sports room, even though it has nothing to do with sports. I just like the way it looks. So if you are available, if you'd like to join me on my other channel, this is where I put all of my other content, really the RFK Trump content. This is where it's mostly featured here. As you can see, I still have this up. But so this is Gray Fernandez Jr. Media, and that is the icon you'll be looking for. And I will be posting some more videos there. I got the latest Tucker. Obviously, I've been a little late on some of the other things, and I started making some of these smaller clips too. But I have a whole Donald Trump playlist here, and we'll see how long any of this stays up. And I think you all know why. But if you do want to go and check that channel out, there is some personal stuff, some private things or some things that are outside of the RFK and Trump world. But most of the RFK and Trump things will be posted to this channel here. So if you do want to stay up to date with that without hearing me rambling, that is the best place to go. So until then, I think that is just about all that I wanted to cover here. There may be, I'm just going to check, I'm going to check Twitter to see. There was a few good things. I don't know if it's still up or not. Let's see, we'll go here. There we go. So hopefully y'all can see this one as well. Probably if I go like this, you can. And look at what this guy is doing here. So he's got some interesting things. This is, 12 minutes ago. This one, how long is this? 36 seconds. Let's listen to this.
Popular.
Very popular.
Hey, everybody.
Whoops. Guess I'm not logged in. Sorry.
This is what the dog car looks like.
Hey!
And there's actually people in it. You see, it's quite popular.
Very popular.
Are you guys feel nervous about the seatbelt situation?
No,
No,
that's
no,
the
we're
best ride I've
fine.
been in.
All right, well, that's not right. But this car has been really gotten popular
The smell is amazing in here.
since I made that video. These guys paid $1,000
So if you
each.
donate, you too can smell like these dogs.
We're selling this trip on the campaign now. Hey, everybody.
Funny stuff there. Let's see. He also tweeted about 5 hours ago. They closed the schools, mandated vaccines, and suspended the Constitution on shaky and unscientific grounds. I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. And
Go to school, people to work. So many people now are telling me, I wish I had listened to voices, in the media or doctors who are telling me not to do it. but I had to work. That it breaks my heart.
That is heartbreaking because the public health authorities knew from the beginning that the vaccine did not do what they said it was going to do.
I promise you, they are safe and effective. Listen to Dr. Fauci.
It took them 22,000 vaccines to prevent one death. They were mandating it to people who did not need the vaccine, to children. There was essentially 0 healthy children who died in this country from COVID. Why were we giving them vaccinations that don't prevent transmission? In Israel, not a single person under the age of 50 died of COVID. And there's a whole pipeline of new emergencies, whether it's terrorism or all these new diseases. And now at any time they want, they can say, oh, it's an emergency. The Constitution is now suspended. And that is a really ugly precedent. What we're confirming today should be a warning to Americans to not ever let this happen again.
Just like 911. I mean, they use so many different things to try to do exactly what he's talking about. He's right on point. Once again, he's staying on point. I'm just reading some of his crimes. This was good too. He's taking a group of cool teens from Compton, South Central, on a rattlesnake roundup in the Santa Monica wilderness. Cutting across all this. I like this one. This is another one I saw this morning. Thanks to Rob Schneider for your years of courage in emceeing a successful Kennedy 24 fundraiser last night in Brentwood. I want to see that. Where's the footage of that? And yes, I can do more than 10 push-ups. That was my last set. This guy's too funny. Kudos to Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg for setting a physical fitness example for Americans with their Octagon challenge. It's too funny. Here it is. This is what we want to see here. Look at this.
Go.
Let me just this I gotta put in full screen here.
Okay. Let's go. That's a fit boy.
So what he's saying is that was his last set. He was able to do more than 10. Okay, so that's it. That's all that I got for today for this. Unless I can find anything from our good president, Donald Trump. Let's see what the man is saying here. Oh, I always have to log in. Why do I have to log in every time? Let's see. One of the greatest presidents of all time is saying, let me share this tab instead. The Democrat Party hates America. Mark Levin. Oh, Mark Levin. Okay, that's going to be good. This is probably going to be good too. Special counsel Jack Smith wants the world to believe that the case against Donald Trump is open and shut. It's not. Let's take a look.
Will Scharf is a real former federal prosecutor, and he's running for Attorney General of Missouri, and he'd be a great Attorney General in the Show Me State. By the way, they may want to change that phrase, Show Me State, these days. It could be misinterpreted, but that's a whole nother story. Okay, Will Scharf. Espionage Act, Presidential Records Act. How do we make this simple? We have a former Attorney General who's all over television saying, no, it's the Espionage Act. And can you tell me any other former president who's been charged under the Espionage Act since 1917? Do you have one?
It's never happened before. And this is a controversial act to begin with. A lot of free speech advocates think it's unconstitutionally overbroad as written. Certainly, as it's being applied to President Trump here, there are real legal issues with the way that they've brought this case. Jack Smith, the special counsel, wants America to think this is a very simple open and shut case. They found documents at Mar-a-Lago, and therefore President Trump is guilty. But anyone with a passing familiarity with the law here knows that that's just not the case. And that's why it's so important that we fight back against the dominant mainstream narrative here.
Why isn't it the case?
So under the Presidential Records Act, when a president leaves office, he has the right to determine which of his records are presidential records, official documents, that sort of thing, and which are personal records, items of a personal nature, diaries, journals, memorabilia, items that are of personal importance, not official importance. That determination by the president, courts have said, is essentially unreviewable. Now, in order to prove an Espionage Act count, it's not enough for them to show that President Trump had some documents. They have to show that President Trump knew that he wasn't supposed to have those documents. They have to show that he knew that those documents were a particular type of documents called national defense information. They have to show that he then willfully failed to turn those documents over to a government official that he knew had the right to receive them. So when you take all of that put together, this case is really more about President Trump's state of mind than anything else. And I think that when you look at the president's responsibilities, duties, and rights under the Presidential Records Act, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for Jack Smith to prove that President Trump had documents he knew he wasn't supposed to have, and that he then willfully failed to turn those documents over to an official he knew he had to turn them over to.
And he's publicly said over and over again, I've declassified this. And your point is, it doesn't matter if he did or didn't. He thought he did as a president, or he has said over and over and over again, that information, I believe, belongs to me. So if you have someone who goes on TV, obviously this information didn't belong to him. It was classified. Your point is that's not enough. It's what's in the president's thinking. It's his state of mind. It's his intent. Not what the prosecution and some talk show guys think he had to say. Now, what about this attorney-client privilege issue? Everybody out there knows what this is. You hire an attorney on a contract case, not even a criminal case. You have to be able to consult that attorney and ask them whatever questions you want. And by asking them whatever questions you want, it doesn't mean you're luring them into some kind of criminal scheme. Explain.
Yeah, so under American law, the attorney-client privilege is one of the most crucial guarantees given to a defendant. The right of a defendant to consult with his attorney, to develop legal strategy with his attorney, to ask his attorney what he is and isn't allowed to do. Jack Smith has taken those sorts of conversations between President Trump and a former lawyer of his named Evan Corcoran, and they've said that the questions President Trump was asking amounted to his enlisting that lawyer in some kind of a criminal conspiracy. Relying on that argument, they've then used conversations between President Trump and his lawyer that would otherwise be privileged, and that underlies a lot of this indictment. Without that information, big chunks, if not all of this indictment, will probably end up being dismissed. So they've run roughshod over attorney-client privilege. They've intruded on conversations that I believe they didn't have a right to intrude on. And that's really at the heart of this case here.
Which is why he wants a rush job when it comes to a trial as fast as he can. He doesn't want these issues challenged and so forth. He just wants to have the whole field to himself. And I notice also, just quickly here, Will, they're basically trying to intimidate the federal judge. The federal judge was appointed by Donald Trump. And so you have articles that she has very limited criminal background experience, that she screwed up on the special master appointment issue, that she's in Trump camp and Trump got a favorable appointment. So they're trying to influence the outcome of her decisions on motions and other things so she can get straight with the left, the media, and these anti-Trumpers, no?
Yeah, instead of letting this case play out in court as a normal case would, Jack Smith and his team are playing to the peanut gallery. They're playing to the mainstream media. They're trying to make arguments in front of the mainstream media that this judge, who, by the way, was a former federal prosecutor herself, really an eminent legal mind, they're trying to say that she's somehow biased or somehow not up to taking this case. And the reason for that, Mark, is that they are terrified of litigating some of the very serious legal flaws in the case that they've strung together against President Trump.
Yes or no, because I'm out of time here. These documents that are in question, that are cited by the prosecution, The defense has a right to see every one of these documents. We have not secret trials, but public trials. And to see every one of these documents in public, in the courtroom, with the press there, and with all the rest of us looking over their shoulders. Yes or no?
Absolutely. The jury has a right to see all of these. For these documents not to be made public would be highly, highly irregular. We're going to get to watch this case unfold in public. And I think that's what the special counsel is scared of.
Well, I wish you all the best. You'd be a fantastic attorney general in Missouri. Will Scharf, God bless you, and thank you for your insight here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. Great to be with you.
We'll be right back.
And I'm going to also, so that was great. Another great one. Running out of time here. But I do want to also play this. This is a 3-minute and 34-second clip from Donald Trump. Oh, this is posted a month ago. Really? Oh, okay. Darn, I thought this was a new one. Okay, that's weird. Really thought that was a new clip. Let me just go back. So let's see. I was looking at, yeah, this thing here was posted. So maybe that's just an old, okay, because there was an article that they posted, and it's just an old clip. Anyways, I'm going to end with this one here. I still like this. Still like the idea of this here. Let's go.
Under my leadership, we had the most secure border in U.S. history by far. We replaced catch and release with detain and deport. One of my most successful policies was Title 42, which allowed for instant expulsion of any illegal alien who crossed our borders. Anybody. If they were bad, we got them out. We got them out fast. Those who trespassed into our country could be immediately sent back to the place from which they came. Every would-be illegal border crosser knew that with Donald Trump in the White House, our border was closed. It was absolutely closed, and they had no chance of getting in, and therefore they didn't come. When Joe Biden came into office, he terminated every successful border policy that was put into place, including Remain in Mexico, one of the best of them all, deliberately throwing open the borders and instituting catch and release and resettling untold millions and millions of illegal aliens into the United States. They're now your neighbors. Congratulations. Now Joe Biden is preparing to remove the last remnants of my Title 42 policy just a few weeks from now, wiping out the few remaining shreds of our southern border. Hundreds of thousands of people will pour in that day, and the judge already said that's what's going to happen. This will mean complete and total mayhem and utter lawlessness, and unlimited numbers of fraudulent asylum seekers flood into the United States unchecked. They are unchecked. Nobody has any idea where they come from. They don't know if they're healthy, if they're sick, if they're insane, or if they're coming from prisons. Already, tens of thousands of illegal aliens have massed on the Mexican side of the border. They're getting ready to storm across the moment Title 42, which is so important, is officially gone. Can you believe they're getting rid of it? And when that happens, countless more will charge in from all over the world. They're coming from all over the world. And some of the states like California are saying, come in and we give you free health care, free education. People hear that from other countries. They say, well, that sounds good to me. And they're making a mass charge toward our border. It's absolute lunacy. It will be a mass resettlement of millions and millions of illegal aliens into your communities. And the invasion will be aided, abetted, and facilitated by the Biden administration's every step of the way. Every path they take will be made easier by Biden. Congress should move immediately to choke off and terminate all funding for catch and release. We should ban Joe Biden and the communists and the administration from using a single federal taxpayer dollar to set loose illegal aliens into the United States. Now is the time we have to fight to make sure our country survives, because our country cannot take 2 more years of this invasion. And when I take the oath of office on January 20th, 2025, we will immediately begin the process of fully securing the border and removing the illegal aliens Joe Biden has unlawfully allowed to break into our country. Thank you very much.
All right, so there it is. There's just so much happening. We haven't even gotten started. We're not even into 2024. And as you know, in the description of that video, Trump makes it clear he plans on taking office January 20th, 2025. So 2024 is going to be a very, very interesting year. By the end of 2024, we should know who is the president. One thing that I do want to look up is, keep talking about the primaries. 2024 primary election dates. That's what I really want to, because it's the way that it works is kind of weird. So let me see if I can find something on this. We're trying to understand this a little bit more. Maybe I can actually just read this here while I'm here. This is something I need to know, because this is I'm making some plans right now on what I'm going to do. So these all have the different states here for the primary. Let's see. State primary and presidential election dates for 2024 are listed below. Political parties use primaries and caucuses to determine which candidate will run for their state's partisan offices in the November 5th, 2024 general election. Some states hold their state and presidential primaries on different dates, as indicated in the tables. Legislative, congressional, gubernatorial, statewide offices, and presidential primary contests are on the ballot in 46 states. Louisiana, Mississippi, New Jersey, and Virginia hold their legislative elections in odd-numbered years. The dates listed for those states apply to congressional and other races. The earliest state primaries for 2024 are held March 5th, 2024, with the latest in mid-September, with 13 primaries each. June and August are the busiest months for state primaries. All right, so then they give you all that. Primary dates are subject to change by legislative action. No doubt there. The dates listed here are based on the state election resources or statutory requirements as of May 21st, 2023. Great man died on that day. So then they give you all the different states. This is NCSL.org, National Conference of State Legislators. So you can go and look at all that. And they have the whole table of each state. So find your state and see when all of that is happening. So, yeah, next summer, about a year from now, it's going to really heat up. It's going to heat up. So we'll see. Hopefully there won't be any burnout between now and then, but only time will tell. God bless you all. Until next time.